Human Janitor saved 2 injured dragon hatchlings. Week later, the Dragon King stood at his door. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The mop slid across the floor in rhythmic strokes, a dance Tyler Grant had perfected over 15 years of custodial work. He hummed quietly to himself as he worked, the empty hallways of the interspecies embassy echoing with the soft splash of soapy water. Outside the windows, the twin moons of Nexus Station cast an ethereal blue glow across the diplomatic quarter. Tyler was just another human maintenance worker on a station filled with the greatest minds of 17 galactic species. Invisible by design, necessary but overlooked. The perfect position for a man who preferred the company of his thoughts to the complicated politics of interstellar diplomacy. Tonight, like most nights, he worked the graveyard shift when the embassy hall stood empty of ambassadors and their entourages. The diplomatic summit between the Draconian Empire and the Terran Alliance had ended hours ago, leaving behind the usual aftermath of discarded papers, forgotten coffee cups, and the lingering tension of unresolved negotiations. Tyler didn't concern himself with the politics. His job was to make sure everything was spotless before morning, when the delegates would return to continue their delicate dance of words and treaties. He pushed his cart toward the maintenance closet at the end of the eastern wing, ready to finish his shift and return to his small apartment in the human sector. The station was beginning its night cycle, the ambient lighting dimming to simulate evening. Most species appreciated the artificial day-night rhythm, even if it was merely psychological comfort in the vacuum of space. As he approached the service corridor, a strange sound caught his attention. At first, he thought it was just the ventilation system. The old station creaked and groaned like a sailing ship at times, but there was something distinctly organic about this noise. A soft, pained whimper followed by a scratching sound. Tyler paused, head tilted. There it was again, a mewling cry that reminded him of the kittens his daughter used to rescue back on Earth, before the divorce, before he'd taken the off-world contract to escape memories too painful to face daily. "Hello," he called out, knowing it was probably just a misplaced pet from one of the residential areas. Some of the diplomats brought exotic creatures aboard despite station regulations. "Anyone there?" The whimpering intensified, accompanied by a strange clicking sound. Tyler followed the noise to a small maintenance duct near the floor. The grate covering it was slightly ajar, which was unusual. He knelt down, muscles protesting after hours of work, and peered into the darkness. 2 gleaming eyes reflected the corridor's low light back at him. Then 4. Tyler blinked in confusion as he realized he was looking at 2 small creatures huddled together in the dusty confines of the air duct. His first thought was that they might be some escaped laboratory specimens. The science wing was always experimenting with new life forms, but as his eyes adjusted, he recognized what they were. Dragon hatchlings. Specifically, Draconian royal hatchlings. Tyler's heart skipped a beat. The Draconians were among the most powerful and feared species in the galaxy. Evolved from ancient reptilian stock on a harsh desert world, they had developed intelligence, technology, and a warrior culture that had conquered dozens of star systems before humanity had even achieved spaceflight. Their empire spanned 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, and their royal bloodline was considered sacred. And here were 2 of their offspring, trembling in an air duct of a human-run space station. "Well, hello there," Tyler said softly, trying not to frighten them further. "You're a long way from the Draconian Quarter, aren't you?" The larger of the 2 hatchlings, no bigger than a house cat, but covered in iridescent emerald scales, hissed weakly. The smaller one, a deep sapphire blue, merely whimpered again. Tyler noticed dark stains beneath them that looked distressingly like blood. "You're hurt," he whispered, concern overriding his initial fear. The protocol was clear. Contact station security immediately for any issue involving diplomatic species, especially Draconians. But something in the way the hatchlings huddled together, afraid and injured, stirred something protective in Tyler. He should call security. He should absolutely not reach into the duct. Yet he found himself doing exactly that, moving slowly to avoid startling the small dragons. "I'm not going to hurt you," he murmured. "Let me help." The green hatchling snapped at his fingers, but with none of the legendary strength of adult draconians. The blue one merely trembled. As Tyler's eyes adjusted further, he could see what appeared to be experimental tags attached to their wings. Someone had been using these royal hatchlings for tests, which explained both their injuries and why they were hiding. Illegal experimentation on draconian royalty? Tyler could hardly believe it. The diplomatic fallout would be catastrophic if discovered. War had started over less serious insults to draconian honor. "Come on, little ones," he coaxed, taking off his uniform jacket and holding it open. "Let's get you somewhere safe and take care of those wounds." To his surprise, after a moment's hesitation, both hatchlings crept forward. The blue one practically collapsed into his makeshift pouch, while the green one maintained a wary distance until Tyler gently scooped it up, taking care to avoid its injured wing. Tyler looked around nervously. If he were caught with royal hatchlings, the best outcome would be immediate termination of his employment. The worst didn't bear thinking about. But he couldn't leave them here, hurt and frightened. With a deep breath, he made his decision. He carefully bundled the hatchlings in his jacket, placed them in his cleaning cart under some towels, and wheeled them toward the service elevator that would take him to the human residential sector. His shift was over anyway. No one would question a janitor returning to his quarters. His small apartment was Spartan but clean. After 15 years working on various stations, Tyler traveled light. A few photographs of his daughter, now grown and working on a terraforming project on Mars, a worn couch, and a kitchenette that had seen better days. He cleared a space on his coffee table and gently placed the bundle containing the hatchlings down. "Let's see what we've got here," he said softly, carefully unwrapping his jacket to reveal the two small dragons. In the better light of his apartment, their injuries looked worse. The experimental tags had been carelessly attached, tearing delicate wing membranes. Both hatchlings had additional injuries that appeared to be from rough handling. Tyler felt a surge of anger. He'd heard rumors about black market research on rare species, but on draconian royalty? Someone was either insane or had protection from very high places. The blue hatchling looked up at him with intelligent eyes that seemed too old for its tiny body. Draconians were known to be born with ancestral memories, making even their youngest far more aware than human infants. "I know you probably understand me," Tyler said, retrieving a first aid kit from his bathroom. "I'm going to try to help you, but I'm not a vet or a doctor. This might hurt a little." To his amazement, both hatchlings remained perfectly still as he cleaned their wounds with antiseptic and carefully removed the cruel experimental tags. The green one winced occasionally, but made no sound. The blue one watched him with those ancient eyes, assessing his every move. When he'd done all he could, Tyler prepared a makeshift nest from old towels and placed it near his heating unit. "You should be warm here," he said, gently transferring the hatchlings to their new bed. "I'll get you some water and, well, I'm not sure what you eat, but I'll figure something out." He filled a shallow dish with water and placed it near them, then rummaged through his refrigerator. Draconians were carnivores, he knew that much. He found some leftover chicken from his dinner the night before and cut it into tiny pieces. To his relief, both hatchlings ate eagerly, though they seemed exhausted from their ordeal. Within minutes, they had curled up together in the makeshift nest and fallen asleep. Tyler sat on his couch, watching them breathe and wondering what in the 17 hells he was going to do next. Harboring draconian royalty was probably treason under about 6 different treaties. But returning them to wherever they had escaped from was unthinkable. He should contact the draconian embassy directly, he decided. But not tonight. Tonight, the hatchlings needed rest and safety. Tomorrow, he would figure out how to return them without implicating himself or alerting whoever had been experimenting on them. Tyler awoke with a start, realizing he had dozed off on the couch. Sunlight, artificial but convincing, streamed through his small window, indicating station morning had arrived. He was supposed to be on shift again in 4 hours. A soft chirping drew his attention to the makeshift nest. Both hatchlings were awake, looking considerably better after food and rest. The green one was actually exploring the edge of the coffee table, while the blue one remained in the nest, watching Tyler with those disconcertingly intelligent eyes. "Morning," Tyler said, stretching out the kink in his neck from sleeping awkwardly. "You two seem to be feeling better." The green hatchling chirped again, a sound almost like agreement. Tyler smiled despite himself. He checked the time and grimaced. He needed to make a decision about what to do with the hatchlings before his next shift. Just as he was considering his options, his communication terminal chimed with an incoming station-wide announcement. Tyler activated the screen and felt his blood run cold as the stern face of Station Security Chief Alexis Fox appeared. "Attention all Nexus Station personnel and residents," she announced, her expression grave. 2 Royal Draconian offspring have been reported missing from the diplomatic quarter. The Draconian delegation has declared this a Level 1 diplomatic emergency. Tyler glanced at the hatchlings, who had both gone very still, as if they understood the announcement concerned them. Any information regarding their whereabouts should be reported immediately to station security, Chief Fox continued. The Draconian Empire has threatened to consider their disappearance an act of war if they are not recovered within 48 hours. Cooperation is mandatory under Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha. The screen displayed images of the 2 hatchlings, looking considerably healthier than the injured creatures Tyler had found. The announcement ended with a direct communication channel for information. Tyler switched off the terminal and ran a hand through his hair. This was worse than he'd imagined. Not only was he harboring missing royal dragons, but their disappearance was now a potential catalyst for interstellar war. "You're definitely not what they're making you out to be, are you?" he asked the hatchlings, who were watching him intently. "Someone hurt you, and now they're covering it up." The blue hatchling chirped sadly, as if confirming his suspicion. Tyler paced his small apartment, considering his options. He couldn't turn them in, not when someone powerful enough to experiment on royal hatchlings was clearly involved in their disappearance. But keeping them hidden while the entire station was searching for them seemed impossible. He needed more information and a plan. Most importantly, he needed to know who had hurt these hatchlings and why they were now pretending they had simply wandered off. Tyler knelt beside the coffee table, looking directly at the hatchlings. "I'm going to help you," he promised. "But I need to understand what happened. Who hurt you?" The blue hatchling tilted its head, eyes narrowing in concentration. Then, to Tyler's astonishment, it stretched out a tiny clawed foot and dragged it through spilled water on the table surface, creating a crude symbol. Tyler recognized it immediately. The insignia of the Orion Pharmaceutical Consortium, one of the largest corporate entities in human space and a major contractor for the station's medical facilities. "Orion," he whispered, stunned. "They did this to you." Both hatchlings chirped affirmatively. Tyler sat back on his heels, mind racing. Orion had enough political and economic power to operate with near impunity, even on a diplomatic station. They also had access to secure areas throughout Nexus due to their medical supply contracts. But why? He asked, more to himself than to the hatchlings. What could they possibly gain from experimenting on Draconian royalty that would be worth risking war? The green hatchling chirped impatiently and nudged its sibling. The blue one seemed to hesitate, then stretched out its wing, the injured one, and flexed it slightly. In the morning light, Tyler noticed something he had missed the night before. The wing membranes had an unusual crystalline quality, with tiny veins that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. "Your wings," Tyler breathed. "They were studying your wings." He remembered hearing something about Draconian royal biology being unique, even among their own species. The royal bloodline possessed biological properties that had evolved over millennia, adaptations to the harsh radiation of their home world that had resulted in extraordinary abilities. The realization struck him like a physical blow. "They're trying to extract compounds from your wings for pharmaceutical research," he said grimly. "Probably for some miracle drug or longevity treatment they can patent and sell for billions." Both hatchlings nodded, a remarkably human gesture that reinforced Tyler's understanding of their intelligence. He checked the time again and made a decision. He couldn't go to station security, not when a corporation as powerful as Orion might have officials in their pocket. He couldn't contact the Draconian embassy directly without exposing himself as the person who had taken the hatchlings, however innocently. What he needed was evidence that Orion had been experimenting on the hatchlings, and he knew exactly where to find it. "I have to go to work," he told the hatchlings. "My cleaning route takes me through the science wing, including Orion's labs. I can look for proof of what they did to you." He quickly prepared his apartment, setting out more food and water for the hatchlings, and securing his door with additional locks. "Stay hidden," he instructed them, knowing they understood. "I'll be back as soon as I can." The blue hatchling chirped softly, almost like a thank you. Tyler arrived at his shift early, his janitor's uniform neat, but his mind racing with plans and contingencies. His supervisor raised an eyebrow at his punctuality, but said nothing as Tyler collected his cleaning cart and headed to his assigned section. He worked methodically through the diplomatic wing, ears alert for any conversations about the missing hatchlings. The station was buzzing with tension. He passed numerous security patrols conducting searches of public areas. No one paid any attention to the human janitor, just as he'd counted on. When he reached the science wing, he slowed his pace, taking care to appear wholly focused on his cleaning duties. The Orion laboratories were located in a high-security section, but janitorial staff had access for basic maintenance. Tyler waited until a shift change created momentary confusion at the security checkpoint, then slipped through with his cart, nodding respectfully to the distracted guards. Inside, he kept his head down, moving from room to room with practiced efficiency. In the third research laboratory, he found what he was looking for. A segregated containment area marked with biohazard warnings contained equipment that had clearly been hastily cleaned. But Tyler had 15 years of experience identifying substances others missed. There were distinctive scale fragments and minuscule drops of blood that matched the unique coloration of the hatchlings he'd rescued. Working quickly, he used his station-issued tablet, ostensibly for logging maintenance tasks, to document the evidence. He also discovered research notes on a carelessly unlocked terminal, briefly scanning files labeled Project Immortal Scale before copying what data he could to his tablet. Just as he was finishing, the laboratory door hissed open. Tyler immediately resumed mopping, not looking up as footsteps approached. "Maintenance shouldn't be in here today," a cold voice said. "This area is restricted due to sensitive research." Tyler glanced up with a carefully crafted expression of apologetic confusion. "Sorry, sir. Just following my assigned route." The system showed this lab was due for cleaning. The man studying him wore an Orion executive uniform, his face bearing the artificial perfection of expensive genetic optimization. Dr. Elliot Scott, according to his identification badge, Orion's chief research officer on Nexus Station. "Your name and ID number?" Scott demanded. "Tyler Grant, maintenance staff, ID 87421. Tyler replied evenly, fighting to keep his expression neutral. "I can leave if this isn't a good time." Scott's eyes narrowed slightly. "No, finish your work. But be quick about it. This laboratory will be sealed for decontamination within the hour." Destroying evidence, Tyler realized. They were planning to erase all traces of their experiments on the hatchlings. "Yes, sir. Nearly done," he said, returning to his mopping with deliberate slowness. He needed to give the data transfer to his tablet time to complete. Scott lingered, watching him with suspicious eyes before finally turning to access a secure terminal. Tyler finished cleaning, his heart pounding, but his movements betraying nothing of his inner tension. When the data transfer silently completed, he packed up his supplies and headed for the exit. "Maintenance," Scott called just as Tyler reached the door. "Did you clean in the containment area as well?" Tyler turned, meeting the executive's gaze steadily. "No, sir. That area is marked biohazard. We're instructed not to enter containment without special authorization." Scott studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Very good. Carry on." Once back in the corridor, Tyler exhaled slowly, willing his racing pulse to normalize. He had the evidence, but now he needed to get it to someone who could act on it without being blocked by Orion's influence. As he wheeled his cart toward the next section on his route, a station-wide alert sounded. Chief Fox's voice echoed through the corridors. "Attention, all personnel. By order of the Draconian Ambassador, a station-wide search is now authorized for the missing royal offspring. All quarters and work areas will be subject to inspection. Cooperation is mandatory." Tyler froze. A station-wide search would include his quarters. The hatchlings would be found. He abandoned his cart in a maintenance alcove and hurried toward the nearest transit hub. He had to get back to his apartment before the search teams reached the human residential sector. The corridors were chaotic, with security personnel directing residents and workers to designated areas for the duration of the search. Tyler used his maintenance access to bypass the main thoroughfares, taking service corridors and emergency stairwells when the turbolifts proved too crowded. He reached his residential block just as a security team was setting up at the main entrance. Cursing under his breath, Tyler ducked into a side corridor and accessed a maintenance shaft that connected to the environmental systems for the residential units. It was a tight fit, designed for repair drones rather than humans, but he managed to squeeze through to the access panel near his apartment. Emerging dusty and breathing hard, Tyler unlocked his door and slipped inside. The hatchlings were alert, clearly aware of the commotion throughout the station. The green one had positioned itself protectively in front of its blue sibling. "We need to move," Tyler told them, quickly gathering the few items he'd prepared for the hatchlings. "They're searching every room on the station." A sharp knock at his door made all three of them freeze. "Station security," a voice called. "Open up for mandatory inspection." Tyler motioned for the hatchlings to hide in his bathroom. He closed the door behind them and took a deep breath before answering. Two security officers stood in the corridor, their expressions stern. "Resident Tyler Grant?" the female officer asked, consulting her tablet. "Yes," Tyler confirmed, trying to appear appropriately concerned but not nervous. "We're conducting a station-wide search for missing draconian royal offspring," she explained, though Tyler obviously knew this already. "We need to inspect your quarters." "Of course," Tyler said, stepping aside to let them enter. "I've been on shift in the diplomatic wing all morning." Heard the announcements. The officers conducted a thorough but professional search, checking under furniture and in closets. Tyler's heart nearly stopped when the male officer approached the bathroom door. "Is this locked?" the officer asked, trying the handle. "The latch sticks sometimes," Tyler explained, moving forward. "Old station construction. Let me show you." He jiggled the handle in a specific way, silently praying the hatchlings had found a good hiding place. The door opened to reveal an empty bathroom. Tyler fought to keep his relief from showing on his face. The officers completed their search and thanked him for his cooperation. As they turned to leave, the female officer paused. "You work maintenance in the diplomatic wing, correct?" "Yes," Tyler answered cautiously. "Eastern section, primarily. Did you notice anything unusual during your shift last night? Any signs of the missing hatchlings?" Tyler shook his head. "Nothing out of the ordinary. Just the usual post-meeting cleanup." She studied him for a moment longer than comfortable, then nodded. "If you do notice anything, report it immediately." "Of course," Tyler assured her. When they were gone, Tyler locked the door and sagged against it, exhausted from tension. "You can come out now," he called softly. No response came from the bathroom. Frowning, Tyler pushed the door open wider and looked around the small space. No sign of the hatchlings. "Where did you?" he began, then looked up. Both hatchlings clung to the ceiling, their claws dug into the soft material of the ceiling panels. Despite their injuries, they had managed to climb up and hide themselves completely out of the line of sight of someone standing in the doorway. "Clever," Tyler said appreciatively as they carefully descended, the blue one wincing slightly from the strain on its injured wing. He checked the time on his tablet, mind racing. The search would continue for hours, possibly days. Keeping the hatchlings hidden in his quarters was no longer an option. He needed to get them to safety, preferably directly to the Draconian embassy, but with evidence proving Orion's involvement. Tyler studied the data he had collected from Orion's lab. The files on Project Immortal Scale confirmed his suspicions. Orion had been extracting compounds from the royal hatchlings' wings that showed promise for radical life extension treatments. The wings contained unique crystalline structures that could apparently repair cellular damage at a fundamental level. A golden medical breakthrough, and all it cost was the torture of infant members of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Tyler felt sick. He turned to the hatchlings, who were watching him expectantly. "I have proof of what they did to you," he told them. "But I need to get you and this evidence to your people safely. Any ideas?" The blue hatchling chirped thoughtfully, then used its claw to scratch a symbol in the condensation on the bathroom mirror. Tyler recognized it as the Draconian royal insignia, followed by what appeared to be a map reference. "The royal quarters in the Draconian embassy," he guessed. The hatchling nodded. Tyler considered the challenge. The Draconian embassy was on the opposite side of the station, and security would be checking all transit between sectors. He couldn't simply walk through the station with 2 royal hatchlings. Then he had an idea. "The maintenance tunnels," he said. "They run throughout the entire station. I can use them to bypass security checkpoints." He quickly gathered what he needed: a small pack with water and food for the hatchlings, his tablet with the evidence, and his maintenance credentials. He studied the station schematics on his tablet, planning a route through the service areas that would take them to the Draconian embassy. "It won't be comfortable," he warned the hatchlings. "Some of these tunnels are barely big enough for maintenance drones." Both hatchlings chirped determinedly. Tyler carefully placed them in his pack, leaving it partially open for air. "Ready?" he asked. 2 affirmative chirps answered him. Tyler accessed the maintenance shaft in his bathroom, the same one he had used to bypass the security team earlier. It was a tight squeeze with the pack, but he managed to pull himself and his precious cargo into the narrow tunnel. For the next 2 hours, Tyler navigated the labyrinthine maintenance system of Nexus Station. He crawled through dusty conduits, climbed maintenance ladders, and edged along narrow walkways designed for repair drones. The hatchlings remained remarkably quiet throughout the journey, only occasionally poking their heads out to observe their surroundings. Finally, they reached a service exit near the Draconian embassy. Tyler checked his tablet map one last time. "We're close," he whispered to the hatchlings. "But this is the tricky part. The embassy entrance will be heavily guarded." The blue hatchling chirped softly and scratched at the pack. Tyler opened it fully, allowing both hatchlings to emerge. They looked around, orienting themselves. Then the blue one pointed with its wing toward a small vent near the floor. "Another air duct?" Tyler asked skeptically. "That seems too obvious. They'll be checking those." The green hatchling made a sound that Tyler could have sworn was draconic laughter. It approached the vent and pressed its tiny claws against a seemingly ordinary section. To Tyler's amazement, the metal shimmered and revealed an iridescent pattern that matched the scales of the hatchlings. "Biometric security," Tyler realized. "It recognizes you." The vent silently slid open, revealing a passage barely large enough for Tyler to crawl through. The hatchlings entered without hesitation, looking back at him expectantly. "A secret entrance to the embassy," Tyler muttered, shaking his head in wonder. "Why am I not surprised?" He squeezed into the passage after them, the vent sliding closed behind him. The tunnel was lined with a strange crystalline material that emitted a soft, bluish light. Tyler followed the hatchlings, who moved with increasing confidence as they approached what he assumed was their home territory. After about 50 meters, the passage widened into a small chamber with another sealed door. This one was clearly sized for adult draconians and decorated with elaborate carvings depicting what Tyler recognized as scenes from draconian history. The hatchlings approached this door as they had the vent, pressing their claws against specific symbols. The door hummed, then slid open to reveal a luxuriously appointed chamber beyond. The hatchlings entered immediately, chirping excitedly. Tyler hesitated at the threshold. He had accomplished his goal. The hatchlings were safely returned to draconian territory. He should leave the evidence on his tablet and retreat back the way they had come. Entering the royal quarters uninvited could be seen as a serious diplomatic offense. Before he could decide, a deep, resonant voice spoke from within the chamber. "Enter, human. My children wish it." Tyler swallowed hard and stepped forward into a room that seemed designed for beings considerably larger than himself. The ceiling soared overhead, and the furniture was scaled for creatures 3 times human size. The walls gleamed with the same crystalline material he had seen in the passage, but here it formed intricate patterns that shifted and changed as he watched. The hatchlings had scampered to the far end of the room, where a massive figure reclined on what appeared to be a throne of living crystal. Tyler felt his breath catch as he recognized the unmistakable form of the Draconian King. Standing over 4 meters tall even in a seated position, King Azurath was an imposing figure that dominated the chamber. His scales were a deep midnight blue with edges that shimmered like stars, and his eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to pierce directly into Tyler's thoughts. The crown upon his horned head was forged from a metal unknown to human science, inscribed with symbols that hurt Tyler's eyes if he looked at them too directly. The hatchlings chirped excitedly, climbing onto the king's massive arms and communicating in rapid draconic sounds that Tyler couldn't begin to understand. "So," the king rumbled, his voice so deep that Tyler felt it in his chest. "You are the one who found my missing children and tended their wounds." It wasn't a question. Tyler swallowed hard and bowed, hoping it was the appropriate protocol. "Yes, Your Majesty. I found them injured and hiding in a maintenance duct near the Eastern Diplomatic Wing." The king's luminous eyes narrowed. "And instead of alerting station security or the Draconian embassy, you took them to your quarters?" Tyler straightened, meeting the king's gaze despite his fear. They were injured, afraid, and had clearly escaped from somewhere they were being mistreated. I couldn't be certain who to trust. "A reasonable concern," the king acknowledged, his tail shifting slightly in what Tyler hoped was approval rather than preparation to strike. "My children have told me of your kindness and your efforts to gather evidence against those who harmed them." Tyler reached for his tablet. "Yes, Your Majesty. I have documentation from Orion Pharmaceuticals laboratories that proves they were experimenting on your children. They were extracting compounds from their wings for a life extension treatment." The king's eyes flared with a dangerous light. "Show me." Tyler approached cautiously and held up his tablet, displaying the files he had copied from Orion's systems. The king extended a massive clawed hand, and Tyler placed the tablet in it, trying not to stare at the gleaming talons that could effortlessly tear through reinforced station bulkheads. King Azurath examined the evidence, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. The chamber's crystalline walls began to pulse with a reddish light that matched the king's mounting anger. "Orion Pharmaceutical," he growled, the name becoming a curse in his mouth. "They dare violate the royal blood for profit. They're planning to destroy all evidence," Tyler added quickly. "When I left their laboratory, they were preparing for a decontamination procedure." The king handed the tablet back to Tyler with surprising gentleness. "You have done a great service to the Draconian Empire, human. Few of your kind would have shown such courage or compassion." Tyler nodded, unsure how to respond to royal gratitude. "I just did what seemed right, Your Majesty." "A rare quality, even among dragons," the king observed, his ancient eyes studying Tyler with new interest. "You are a maintenance worker?" "A janitor, yes," Tyler confirmed, feeling no shame in his profession despite standing before galactic royalty. 15 years of service on various stations." The king made a sound that might have been amusement. "The humble often see what the powerful overlook." He gestured to the hatchlings, who had settled contentedly on his broad shoulders. "My children tell me you treated their wounds with skill and kindness, shared your food with them, and risked your position, perhaps your life, to bring evidence against powerful enemies." "They needed help," Tyler said simply. "I couldn't turn away." The king nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "The Draconian Empire remembers both its friends and its enemies, Tyler Grant. You have earned the former distinction today." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Tyler replied, wondering if this meant he was free to leave. He had a shift to finish, after all, and his supervisor would be looking for him. "You will remain here while I address this matter," the king commanded, rising to his full, intimidating height. The chamber seemed to shrink around his massive form. "My children will keep you company." Before Tyler could respond, King Azurath strode from the chamber, his tail lashing behind him with barely contained fury. The heavy doors sealed shut in his wake, leaving Tyler alone with the two hatchlings. "I guess we're waiting," he told them, settling onto the edge of a cushion sized for draconians. The hatchlings chirped in agreement, the blue one curling up beside him while the green one explored the chamber, occasionally bringing small objects for Tyler to examine. Trinkets that probably cost more than he earned in a decade. Hours passed. Tyler dozed intermittently, exhausted from the stress and physical exertion of the day. The hatchlings seemed content to let him rest, keeping watch from various perches around the chamber. He was awakened by the sound of the massive doors opening. King Azurath returned, accompanied by several other draconians in what appeared to be military attire. The king's expression was grim but satisfied. "The matter has been addressed," he announced. "Orion Pharmaceuticals' research facilities have been seized, their executives detained for questioning, and their data secured." Tyler blinked in surprise. That was fast. Draconian justice does not delay when the evidence is clear, the king said, settling back onto his throne. The human authorities were cooperative once they understood the alternative. Tyler could imagine. The alternative to cooperation with an enraged draconian monarch was probably not something station officials wished to contemplate. Your testimony has been recorded from the data you provided, the king continued. There will be no need for you to appear at formal proceedings, though your service will be acknowledged. Thank you, Your Majesty, Tyler said, relief washing over him. The last thing he wanted was to be at the center of an interstellar diplomatic incident. The king studied him thoughtfully. You will return to your duties as if nothing has occurred, he said, though it sounded more like a question than a command. Tyler nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. I'm already late for my shift. The king made that sound again, definitely amusement. Your diligence honors you. You may go, with the gratitude of the Draconian Empire. My guards will escort you to a public corridor to avoid any complications with your station security. Tyler bowed, then turned to the hatchlings, who were watching him with what seemed like sadness. Take care of yourselves, he told them. No more hiding in air ducts, okay? The blue hatchling chirped and extended its injured wing, which already looked considerably better. The green one actually butted its head against Tyler's hand in an unmistakably affectionate gesture. Farewell, Tyler Grant. The king rumbled as Draconian guards moved to escort Tyler from the chamber. The Draconian Empire remembers. The following days were surprisingly normal. Tyler returned to his maintenance duties, receiving only a minor reprimand for abandoning his post during the search for the hatchlings. Station security announced the safe recovery of the missing royals without providing details, and the diplomatic crisis was officially resolved. Rumors circulated about Orion Pharmaceuticals' sudden departure from Nexus Station, their laboratories sealed by joint human-draconian security teams. Tyler kept his head down and said nothing, even when other maintenance staff speculated wildly about what might have happened. Life resumed its familiar routine. Tyler cleaned diplomatic meeting rooms, emptied waste units, and mopped floors that would be dirty again by the next cycle. The incident with the dragon hatchlings began to feel almost like a dream, a brief, strange interlude in his otherwise unremarkable existence. Exactly 7 days after he had found the injured hatchlings, Tyler returned to his apartment after a long shift. He was tired, looking forward to a quick meal and sleep. When he rounded the corner to his residential block, he stopped short. A draconian royal guard stood outside his door. The guard, nearly 3 meters tall and armored in gleaming scales and ceremonial metal, straightened as Tyler approached. Tyler Grant, the guard stated rather than asked. Yes, Tyler confirmed, suddenly very aware of how many curious human neighbors were watching from partially open doors. You are summoned, the guard announced formally. Before Tyler could ask by whom, though he had a sinking suspicion, the guard stepped aside to reveal Tyler's apartment door sliding open. Within the doorway stood King Azurath himself, his massive form somehow contained within the modest human dwelling. The king had to duck his head to avoid the ceiling, and his wings were folded tightly against his back to avoid knocking over Tyler's few possessions. Your Majesty, Tyler stammered, automatically bowing. I wasn't expecting. That is, how may I assist you? The king's luminous eyes regarded him with the same penetrating intensity Tyler remembered from their previous meeting. Tyler Grant, he rumbled. I have come to fulfill a debt. Tyler glanced nervously at the guard, then at his neighbors, who were now openly staring. Perhaps we should discuss this inside, Your Majesty? The king inclined his massive head and backed carefully into the apartment. Tyler followed, acutely aware of how absurd the situation was. A draconian monarch paying a social call to a human janitor. Inside, the contrast was even more striking. The king's resplendent form seemed to fill the small living space with light and presence, making Tyler's humble furnishings appear shabbier than usual. Forgive the intrusion, the king said, surprising Tyler with the courtesy. But draconian tradition demands that debts be settled promptly and in person. Debts, Your Majesty? Tyler asked, genuinely confused. You don't owe me anything. You saved the lives of my children, the king stated simply. There is no greater debt in draconian culture. Tyler shook his head. I just did what any decent person would do. And that is precisely why the debt must be honored, the king replied. Decency is rare enough in this galaxy to merit recognition. From within his elaborate royal garments, the king produced a small crystalline object that glowed with an inner light. This is a scale of royal favor, he explained, extending it toward Tyler. It marks you as a friend of the Draconian throne, with all the privileges and protections that entails. Tyler hesitantly accepted the gift, feeling it warm to his touch. The crystal seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It is attuned to your life essence now, the king said. Any Draconian in the Empire will recognize it and honor it. You need never fear harm from my people. Thank you, Your Majesty, Tyler said, genuinely moved. This is more than generous. There is more, the king continued. A position awaits you in the royal household, should you wish it. My children have grown quite attached to you, and we have need of individuals with your particular qualities of discretion and compassion. Tyler blinked in surprise. You're offering me a job? In the royal household? With appropriate compensation and accommodations, the king confirmed. Your knowledge of station operations and your inconspicuous nature would be valuable assets. Tyler looked around his small apartment, thinking of his solitary existence since the divorce, his daughter now grown and pursuing her own life on Mars. He had come to Nexus Station seeking anonymity, a place to quietly rebuild his life away from painful memories. He had found routine, safety, predictability, and now a Dragon King stood in his living room, offering him an entirely new path. What exactly would this position entail? Tyler asked cautiously. The king's expression might have been a smile, though draconian facial expressions were notoriously difficult for humans to interpret. Officially, you would serve as cultural liaison and human advisor to the royal household. Unofficially, you would continue doing what you have already demonstrated such aptitude for, noticing what others overlook and acting with integrity when confronted with wrongdoing. You want me to be your human perspective? Tyler clarified. Among other things, the king acknowledged. The alliance between our peoples is young and fragile. Having a human who understands both worlds would be invaluable. Tyler considered the offer. It was unexpected, almost unbelievable, yet something about it felt right. Perhaps this was what he had been waiting for without knowing it. Purpose beyond the daily routine, connection after years of solitude. And your children? He asked. How are they recovering? The king's eyes softened visibly. They are well, thanks to your intervention. Their injuries have nearly healed. They ask about you daily. That settled it for Tyler. He had grown fond of those two small dragons in the brief time they had spent together. The thought of seeing them again, watching them grow and thrive, filled him with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. I accept, Your Majesty, he said firmly. When do I start? Immediately, if you are willing, the king replied. There is much to discuss, and my children are eager to see you again. Tyler looked around his apartment, at the few photographs, the worn furniture, the small life he had built for himself. He would not miss it, he realized. It had been a shelter, not a home. I'll need a few minutes to pack, he told the king. Take whatever time you require, the king said. A new chapter begins for both of us, Tyler Grant. As Tyler gathered his meager possessions, he reflected on the strange twist his life had taken. A week ago, he had been just another invisible maintenance worker, content to fade into the background of station life. Now he stood at the threshold of an adventure he could never have imagined, all because he had chosen compassion when confronted with two injured hatchlings in an air duct. Perhaps that was the lesson, he thought as he placed his daughter's photograph carefully in his bag. The most significant moments often came disguised as small choices, to help or to walk away, to care or to remain indifferent. Tyler Grant, former janitor and newly appointed human advisor to the Draconian royal household, smiled as he closed his bag. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness led to the greatest journeys. Outside his door, a king waited to lead him to his new life. Beyond that, a galaxy of possibilities he had never dared to dream of. All because a human janitor had saved two injured dragon hatchlings. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.